Hi everyone, very good evening. Am I audible? Okay, great. So now let us start. What we are trying to do is, in 2 days, I'll be covering your costing related syllabus, right? So today we'll be talking about the major chapters on costing in brief and very quickly. Whatever concepts I feel that they are important for you, we'll be discussing that. And in case there is something that you would like to ask, please put up your questions. And yeah, so let us start. First thing first, we'll be starting with the process costing. प्रोसेस कॉस्टिंग से किस तरीके के क्वेश्चंस आ सकते हैं? जस्ट वेट फॉर अ सेकेंड. वॉइस इज लो. ओके, जस्ट वेट, गिव मी अ मोमेंट प्लीज. नाउ अभी कैसी है वॉइस? ठीक है, बेटर. आई होप इट शुड बी बेटर. चलिए, एनीथिंग, डू लेट मी नो. सो प्रोसेस कॉस्टिंग में फर्स्ट थिंग फर्स्ट, देयर आर two kinds of things in process costing. Number one is the basics that you need to calculate the units, etc. And number two is the equivalent production related thing. ठीक है? So in today's class, obviously I'll be discussing with you कि basics का क्या calculation है, but more importantly we'll be discussing about the weighted average method as well as the FIFO method, right? Okay, I guess this is going to remain like this. चलिए, so in process costing, wait, I can do one more thing. Just hopefully it should be better now. Process costing में number one thing, let's see the format how we do. See, all of this thing you already understand. ठीक है कि costing में क्या procedure होता है, but see this. Whenever we talk about the process costing, we need to create a particular statement, right? And we create a process account. In process account, we always tend to talk about what is your input, what is your opening stock, right? In this side, you write what are the opening stock if you might have any, what is the input units that you have inserted into the process, right? And this side is reserved for your normal loss, abnormal loss that you represent. Apart from that, what is your finished units? That means the units which you have transferred to the next process. And after that, what we have is your closing WIP. आपके पास में closing work in progress भी हो सकता है. So these are the things. Now next thing is abnormal gain. तो इस side आपका abnormal gain represent होता है. Fine. Now before I should start talking about what you can say equivalent production units, I would like to ask you one thing and you need to answer that if you can, right? So suppose if I have given, this is a very basic question, but still I am asking you just to know that what is the understanding level. मान लीजिए मैंने आपको कहा that your process input was 10,000 units. Normal loss is 5%. ठीक है? And apart from that, your actual loss is 1,000. And finished units are 9,000, right? And the cost that you have incurred is somewhere around 10 lakh. And normal loss valued at 10,000, scrap value is at कितना रखें, let's say 10 rupees. Now can you find out, see I'm not going to discuss anything related to strategy because that is done many of the times, right? And I might not be the right person to ask. So I'll stick to the session, what I'm taking. I hope you'll understand. So up now, this is the question for you, and I would like to ask you that how you should be valuing your finished units. आपका finished output आप कितने पे value करेंगे? Please provide me answer for that. There is no closing WIP. कोई क्लोजिंग WIP है नहीं आपके पास में. मैं आपसे सिंपल पूछ रही हूँ हाउ यू आर गोइंग टू वैल्यू योर फिनिश यूनिट. नाउ ओवर हियर आई हैव जस्ट ट्विस्टेड इंफॉर्मेशन अ बिट, थोड़ा सा जस्ट ट्विस्ट किया है. टेल मी एनीवन. So in this particular question, देखो opening और closing का तो कोई matter ही नहीं है. They have given you normal loss is 5%. That means your normal loss is going to be 500 units, right? Actual loss is 1,000 units. That means 500 is your normal loss and 500 is your abnormal loss. 500 आपका normal है, 500 abnormal है. Now in sometimes what might happen in the question is कि वो आपको कह सकते हैं normal loss का value भी दे दिया है उन्होंने 10,000 पे, उन्होंने valuation कर दिया है, and apart from that they have given you कि स्क्रैप में आप बस 10 रुपए निकाल सकते हैं. ठीक है, स्क्रैप वैल्यू जो है वो आपकी 10 रुपए है. सो इन दिस पर्टिकुलर केस व्हाट इज गोइंग टू हैपन, अगर मैं फिनिश गुड्स का अपना यूनिट्स निकालना चाहती हूँ, राइट? सो माय कंप्लीटेड यूनिट्स आर 9,000. आई वांट टू फाइंड द वैल्यूएशन फॉर इट. सो दिस इज हाउ आई विल फाइंड आउट. 10 lakh rupees is my cost that I have incurred, and I have to deduct any recovery which I am making from normal loss. सिर्फ normal loss की recovery आप minus करेंगे. ठीक है, तो normal loss 5% है, that is 500 units, and scrap is at 10 rupees value. ये जो valuation किया है ना normal loss का, sometimes it might be given to you in question. कई बार आपको ये सवाल में दिया गया होगा, just ignore it. ठीक है, अगर दोनों information दी हुई हैं तो use the scrap value. If just valuation is given, then you can go ahead with that, right? Otherwise, out of these two information, I'll be choosing this. ठीक है, so 500 units multiplied by 10 rupees is somewhere giving me 5,000. Divide what was my input? So आपका total input है 10,000 और इसमें से आप सिर्फ क्या माइनस करेंगे? normal loss माइनस करेंगे, that is 500 units. Why? Because abnormal का valuation तो मैं separately करती हूँ. Can I ask you one more thing? Where do we take the abnormal loss related valuation? Abnormal loss का valuation हम कहाँ लेकर जाते हैं? abnormal loss का valuation हम कहाँ लेके जाते हैं? See, normal loss I have incurred over here. Whatever recovery I am making out of it, I am inflating my cost of production. मैं अपने cost of production को inflate कर रही हूँ. But the same thing does not go for the abnormal loss. Abnormal loss के लिए same चीज नहीं जाती. Abnormal loss का separate valuation होगा, right? So if you'll see, I am valuing 9,500 units. 9,000 is the finished one and 500 is the abnormal one. ठीक है? 500 आपकी abnormal units होंगी which we will take to the costing P&L. So this is the basic structure of the process costing. But in process costing, what is important for us to discuss is हम क्या discuss करना चाहते हैं? Equivalent method of production. ठीक है? Equivalent units, because sometimes it disturbs us, right? So हम discuss करेंगे FIFO method as well as your weighted average method, and that is going to be the main point of discussion under process costing. Just wait for a second. So over here, I'm assuming that you already know you are already your basics of cost for process costing is already covered, right? So now let's move forward to it. This is the example. Same example से मैं आपका FIFO method भी solve करूंगी और weighted average method भी solve करूंगी. Now FIFO method का मतलब क्या होता है? First in, first out. That means my opening WIP will have a separate identity. जो मेरा opening WIP है, I will take in that first, right? It will have a separate identity throughout the process, and this is how I'll make the calculation. Weighted average method में क्या है? किसी का कोई separate identity नहीं है. Everything, whatever input and whatever WIP we have incurred, we are going to take it together and we are going to find out an average cost for it, right? So this is what the difference between the FIFO and weighted average method is. Now be with me. See this particular question, because the same question we are going to solve through the weighted average as well. ठीक है? इससे देखो, even in equivalent method of production, your what you can say, difficulty can go higher than this, but we are not expecting it. This is the most comprehensive question which I could find, and that is why I have included it. We are going to find out equivalent statement as well as the cost of units as well. So let us see that. यहाँ पे आपको बताया गया है that there is an opening WIP which is given to you. ठीक है? Opening WIP which is given to you 1000 units. That means when you started with this particular process, there were 1000 units which you brought in from the previous process. This is what you can say. These units were 60% complete. मतलब कि 60% काम already हो चुका था, and in order to do this particular 60% work, the cost which was incurred was 1,10,000. ठीक है, इतना आप already incur कर चुके थे. Next thing, in this particular process, what is the units that you have introduced? 10,000 units. कितनी units आपने introduce की? 10,000. What is the cost you have incurred onto it? 19,30,000. जितनी इतनी आपने cost इस पे incur की. Now out of this, how much you have transferred to the next process? Next process में I have transferred 9,000 units. कितनी units transfer किए मैंने? 9,000 units I have transferred. Now closing WIP is 800 units. That means in this particular process, when I have finished the whole work, 800 यूनिट्स अभी भी प्रोसेस में हैं, जो मुझे अगली बार कंप्लीट करनी पड़ेगी. These 800 units are 75% complete. That means obviously अगर पूरी कंप्लीट हो जाती तो फिनिश्ड में ना चली जाती. They are not complete as of now, so that is why we are taking that they are 75% complete. Now normal loss is estimated at 10% of total input. Please be aware about these things. नॉर्मल लॉस उन्होंने कहा है 10% ऑफ टोटल इनपुट. टोटल इनपुट का मतलब क्या? 1000 प्लस 10,000. ठीक है, नया जो आपने इंट्रोड्यूस किया, दिस इज अ फ्रेश इनपुट. टोटल इनपुट मींस बोथ ओपनिंग WIP एज वेल एज योर द इनपुट दैट यू हैव मेड. फाइन. नाउ दे आर टेलिंग यू स्क्रैप्स रियलाइज 10 रुपीज पर यूनिट. ठीक है, हमें स्क्रैप का वैल्यूएशन दे दिया. Scraps are 100% complete. Great. You have to use the FIFO method and you have to find out equivalent production and cost per equivalent unit. आपको ये find out करना है. Now, very quickly we will see how we can prepare this particular thing. It is super easy because this is FIFO method. I have to keep the identity of opening WIP separate. Identity opening WIP की separate रहेगी because I have to identify what has came in first, and that is why I have to consume it first, right? So you see this. This is the introduction part. Opening WIP कितना था हमारे पास में? 1000 units. How many units I have introduced? This is the 10,000, right? So total it gives me 11,000. Total आपका क्या आ गया? 11,000. Now let's come back over here. This is your input. This is your output. Total of both the sides should be 11,000. Total दोनों साइड का 11,000 होगा. Now you see, in this process, how many units you have completed? 9,000. 9,000 units हमने complete की हैं. Fine. Out of this 9,000, 1,000 belongs to opening WIP and remaining 8,000 comes from the fresh input, right? This is how we have bifurcated. Got that? Normal loss उन्होंने कहा था 10% of total input. Total input is 1,000 opening WIP, 10,000 that is the fresh input gives you 11,000, right? 11,000 का 10% आपका कितना हो गया? 1,100. This is your normal loss. Fine. Closing WIP they have already given me in the question 800, and finally I have found out that input का total 11,000 है, तो output का total भी 11,000 होना चाहिए, just like how it works in the balance sheet, just like how it happens in the balance sheet, right? So 11,000 and 11,000. So I have gotten my abnormal loss in the balancing figure. मैंने इस साइड का टोटल किया 9,000, 1100 and 800. 11,000 में से माइनस किया, so I got to know that I have an abnormal loss of the 100. See, this table you have to solve first. ये table इतनी tough नहीं है जितनी आपको लग रही है. This is just for the sake of your understanding. This is simple plus and minus, right? You don't have to create a table and all of those things. You don't have to do that. आपको बस ये समझ में आना चाहिए that how we are doing it, right? So you have to focus on to the solution part first. ठीक है, तो कॉन्सेप्ट, क्योंकि इक्विवेलेंट वाला थोड़ा सा हमारे दिमाग में प्रॉब्लम क्रिएट करता है ना, दैट इज व्हाई. नाउ लेट अस सी दिस इक्विवेलेंट प्रोडक्शन. Opening WIP was 60% complete already. 60% already complete था. So now in this process, how much I have worked on to it? That is 40%. मैंने कितना काम किया उसके ऊपर? 40%, right? So 1000 multiplied by 40%. That means 400 equivalent finished goods worth of work I have done. 8,000 fresh inputs, इन पे तो पूरा 100% काम करना पड़ा. So that is why 8,000 equivalent finished goods. Now नॉर्मल लॉस रिलेटेड थिंग. नॉर्मल लॉस में कभी कोई परसेंटेज एलोकेट नहीं किया जाता है. कभी भी कोई परसेंटेज क्यों नहीं एलोकेट किया जाता है? बिकॉज वी अज्यूम दैट this normal loss is the part of business process, right? We are not going to find out a separate valuation for it. We are going to inflate the cost of finished goods for this. ठीक है, इस तरीके से हम इसकी कॉस्ट को एब्जॉर्ब कर लेंगे, क्योंकि हमें पता है कि भाई इतना नुकसान तो होगा ही होगा. अलग से वैल्यूएशन करने की कोई जरूरत नहीं है. क्लोजिंग WIP, they told you that you have worked 75% onto it. आपने 75% काम किया है. 800 multiplied by 75% is 600. That is the equivalent units of production. And scrap के लिए, abnormal loss के लिए, they have said that scrap is 100% complete. That means आपका 100% खर्चा इसमें लग गया है. Right? So now what we have found out, 11,000 is the complete units. They are the complete units. ठीक है? 11,000 units which we know, but actually we have worked on 9,100 complete units, because देखो कुछ units तो यहाँ पे complete नहीं है. If you can see, कुछ units यहाँ पे complete नहीं है, plus this particular part 60% of the work has been done in the previous process. ठीक है, वो पिछली process में ही हो चुका है. Normal loss you don't have to take it in. So if you do have any question regarding this particular table, please put up. ठीक है, FIFO वाली थोड़ी सी वो है, but weighted average वाली बहुत ही आसान है. So I'm hoping that there is no question regarding this. Now you see how we are going to find out the valuation for it. ठीक है, valuation बड़ा ही आसान सा है. इस process में 10,000 units were inserted and the cost incurred was for the period 19,30,000. ठीक है, 19,30,000 was the cost. Just minus the scrap of normal loss. Don't include abnormal loss into it. No, abnormal loss का separate valuation होगा, हम उसको include नहीं करेंगे. 10 multiplied by 1100 gives us 11,000. Subtracted 19,19,000 I have found out. So what is the cost per equivalent unit? 19,19,000 divided by 9,100, which I have found out over there. Now what will happen next? अब अगर कोई मुझसे पूछेगा कि how you need to find out. Now if the question asks me what is going to be the valuation of opening WIP, opening WIP का valuation क्या होगा? So you need to tell that listen, 1,10,000 we have already incurred previously. ये तो हम पहले ही incur कर चुके हैं. 60% काम जो पहले ही हो चुका था उस पे हम 1,10,000 already incur कर चुके हैं. Right? See, this is what I was telling you, that in FIFO method we keep a separate identity versus opening WIP completed during the period. अब इस वक्त क्या काम किया है उसके ऊपर? So right now we have done 40% work. 40% work, 400 units पे हमने काम किया and equivalent What was the cost incurred per unit? 210, we just found out. So now this gives me cost of my total WIP, that is opening WIP का cost क्या रहा? This is the total. This is the total. Opening WIP, separate. Completed units, 8,000 units you have completed, you have incurred onto it, right? So 210, this is your cost for the completed units. Abnormal loss का valuation आप separately करेंगे. 100 units is the abnormal loss multiplied by 210 and this is your abnormal loss का valuation. Similarly, closing WIP का valuation कितना होगा? 600 units. Not 800, because actually the equivalent number of units are 600. That means equivalent का मतलब क्या होता है? Actually you are working on 800 units but they are just 75% complete. So can I assume that 800 units which are 75% complete will be equal to 600 units which are 100% complete, right? So this is what equivalent production means and this is how we have found out the valuation in case of FIFO method. ठीक है, ये आपका FIFO मेथड हो गया. Now similarly, now this was a comprehensive question, बहुत ही बड़ा question था ये, ठीक है, लेकिन in this question everything was covered. How you have to calculate the equivalent units, how you need to find out the cost per unit, right? How you have to find out the valuation of closing WIP or finished goods, etc, etc. Now the similar kind of thing we'll be doing with the weighted average method. In weighted average method, I have told you no separate identity of opening WIP will be maintained. ठीक है, कोई separate identity हम maintain नहीं करेंगे. कैसे नहीं करेंगे? Let us see that. So now in your mind, just compare the two tables which we are reading. You see, opening WIP 1000, units introduced 10,000, total is 11,000. Now come to this particular part. Units completed 9,000. You see, directly मैंने 9,000 लिख दिया. I have not segregated it between 1,000 and 8,000. 1,000 from opening WIP and 8,000 from the fresh inputs. No, मैंने सीधा 9,000 लिख दिया है because I don't want to maintain the identity of opening WIP. 9,000 units पे काम किया. Normal loss is 1100. Great. Closing WIP is 800. Same. Abnormal loss 100. Same. And total is 11,000. Fine. No issues for us. Now यहाँ पे equivalent units क्या होंगी? Obviously units completed पे आपने 100% काम किया. Great. Closing WIP पे आपने 75% काम किया. Abnormal loss पे आपने 100% काम किया and this gives you your equivalent production of 9,700. ठीक है, आपका equivalent production क्या आ गया? 9,700. Great. Now let's move forward. You see this? यहाँ पे अब आएगा वेटेड एवरेज का मतलब क्या होता है? सबको साथ में लेके जोड़ दो, राइट? जस्ट एड एवरीथिंग टुगेदर एंड फाइंड आउट एन एवरेज. दैट इज व्हाट वेटेड एवरेज मींस. सो यू सी, जो ओपनिंग WIP का कॉस्ट है वो मैं अब यहाँ ऐड कर लूंगी. दिस ईयर आई हैव इंकर्ड अ कॉस्ट ऑफ 19,30,000. I'll subtract the scrap of 11,000 and I have gotten a cost of 20,29,000. ठीक है, मुझे कॉस्ट मिल गई है 20,29,000 की. Now I will divide it with the equivalent units, that is 9,700. I found out. I have easily found out what is the per unit cost. ठीक है, per unit cost मुझे मिल गई है. Now I can do valuation very simply. My finished units were 9,000. Just multiply it with 209. You get the answer. My abnormal loss is 100%. Multiply it. You get the answer. And closing WIP is 600. Remember that when we find out the cost, always use the equivalent units, not the original unit of 800, right? So this was something in process costing that was a bit difficult, right? While I have taught you this, I am assuming that you are well versed with the process costing. आपको समझ में आती है process costing क्या है, right? And you are just doing the revision of it. So this was the part that I wanted to discuss in the process costing. Do you guys have any question related to it? Please put up. अगर कोई ऐसी चीज जो इसमें समझ में ना आई हो या एनीथिंग लाइक दैट. No? So we will be moving towards this. Now in the standard costing, I have chosen to discuss your ओवरहेड्स, ठीक है। सो मटेरियल एंड लेबर बहुत बार हम बहुत सारा कुछ पढ़ चुके हैं, बट स्टैंडर्ड कॉस्टिंग में जो आपका ओवरहेड वाला पार्ट है, something we will be discussing over here. Although इसमें questions भी हैं, but we don't have enough time to discuss the questions, so we will be discussing the formulas and the rationale behind it, how you can see what I get from the standard costing related concepts and how you can choose to remember it. ठीक है, किस तरीके से आप याद रख सकते हैं. So that is something we will discuss in the standard costing. Material and labor I am not discussing it because that is something we have done multiple number of times. So we will be talking about the overheads related part, right? So let us see. We have got two kinds of overheads, that is variable overheads as well as the fixed overhead. ठीक है, फिक्स एज वेल एज वेरिएबल में हमारे पास में फर्दर बहुत सारे बाइफिकेशंस है. लाइक इन द वेरिएबल ओवरहेड यू हैव गॉट एक्सपेंडिचर वेरिएंस, एफिशिएंसी वेरिएंस. इन फिक्स्ड ओवरहेड यू हैव गॉट एक्सपेंडिचर, वॉल्यूम वेरिएंस. वॉल्यूम में भी यू हैव एफिशिएंसी, कैपेसिटी एज वेल एज द कैलेंडर वेरिएंस, राइट. सो चलिए क्वेश्चन से ही या तो डिस्कस कर लेते हैं. एक क्वेश्चन कर लेंगे एनीवेज, तब तक फॉर्मूलाज देख लेते हैं and then we'll do just one question of it. So variable overhead cost variances कैसे आप calculate करेंगे? So basically you have to find out the standard variable overhead for actual production and actual variable overhead. ठीक है. Now one thing that is quite confusing, ठीक है, अगर मैं यहाँ पे बोलूंगी तो भी I don't know whether you'll be able to relate with it or not. Whenever you are going to compare the cost variances, जैसे यहाँ पे मैं कंप्यूट कर रही हूँ and I know that overhead cost variance का मतलब है standard cost less actual cost, right? So do remember that for both standard as well as actual, production should be same. ठीक है, production same होना चाहिए, right? अब मुझे एक बात बताओ, when you want to compare that in a class, when you want to compare the marks of the students who have gotten the marks in an examination from a particular class, आप क्लास 12 के बच्चों के ही मार्क्स कंपेयर करोगे ना. वी डू नॉट कंपेयर द मार्क्स ऑफ क्लास 12 स्टूडेंट विद क्लास 11 स्टूडेंट, नो, राइट. So that is why whenever we are going to do the comparison even in cost, do remember that the production level should be same for both the variances, for both the what you can say variables, that is the standard as well as actual. What I am trying to put up, we will be doing it with the what you can say with the help of a question, right, later on. But अभी के लिए बस ये बात दिमाग में रखना कि स्टैंडर्ड वेरिएबल ओवरहेड जब आप निकाल रहे हो तो वो भी एक्चुअल प्रोडक्शन के लिए होना चाहिए. एंड एक्चुअल वेरिएबल ओवरहेड ऑब्वियसली इज गोइंग टू बी फॉर द एक्चुअल प्रोडक्शन. नाउ नेक्स्ट इज एक्सपेंडिचर वेरिएंस, वेरिएबल ओवरहेड एक्सपेंडिचर वेरिएंस. तो यहाँ पे स्टैंडर्ड वेरिएबल ओवरहेड फॉर एक्चुअल आवर्स लेस एक्चुअल वेरिएबल ओवरहेड. नाउ लेट अस सी दिस. इससे ज्यादा अच्छे से यहाँ पे समझ में आएगा आपको. सी दिस, we want to compare the expenditure, that is spending variance. That means we want to compare the rates. हम rates को compare करना चाहते हैं. What is the standard rate and what is the actual rate, right? But what is the foundation which we are using? We are using actual hours. Now relate it with your material as well as the labor overhead. आपके material और labor overhead में भी जब भी आप rate variance calculate करना चाहते हैं, जब भी आप rate variance calculate करना चाहते हैं, you always use actual quantity or actual hour, right? I repeat, whenever you want to compare rate related variance, whether in labor, whether in material, whether in overheads, you will be using the actual hour as a foundation and you want to compare the standard rate with actual rate. ठीक है, ये दोनों आप compare करना चाहते हैं. Now next thing is overhead efficiency variances. ठीक है, efficiency variance का मतलब क्या? Efficiency variance का मतलब I'm talking in terms of hours. I'm talking in terms of hours. Spending का मतलब क्या? I'm talking in terms of rate. खर्चे का मतलब तो रेट से ही आता है ना. एंड एफिशिएंसी वेरिएंस कैसे आएगा? हाउ एफिशिएंट यू वर. ठीक है, आपने 10 घंटे का काम 6 घंटे में कर लिया, वेरी गुड, यू आर वेरी एफिशिएंट. सो व्हेनेवर वी टॉक अबाउट एफिशिएंसी, वी टॉक अबाउट द आवर्स दैट हैज बीन पुट अप. तो अब यहाँ पे देखो क्लियरली, आई वांट टू कंपेयर द आवर्स. मैं आवर्स को कंपेयर करना चाहती हूँ, और जब भी हम आवर्स को कंपेयर करना चाहते हैं ऑलवेज वी यूज स्टैंडर्ड रेट एज द फाउंडेशन, हम हमेशा स्टैंडर्ड रेट को फाउंडेशन की तरह यूज करते हैं। ओके, सो जब हम रेट को कंपेयर कर रहे हैं तब आप एक्चुअल आवर्स को फाउंडेशन की तरह यूज करेंगे, एंड व्हेनेवर यू वांट टू कंपेयर द आवर्स यू आर यूजिंग द रेट एज द फाउंडेशन। ठीक है, आप फाउंडेशन की तरह रेट को यूज कर रहे हैं, दैट इज स्टैंडर्ड रेट। ग्रेट, now this is something which has been given to you. Let us do this particular question for the variable overhead. Yes, that is the thing. Now let us do this particular question. You have to compute the variable overheads. ठीक है, budgeted production has been given to you 6,000. Okay, budgeted production, budgeted variable overhead has been given to you 1,20,000. Okay, standard time for 1 unit of output is 2 hours. एक यूनिट बनाने के लिए आपको कितना टाइम लगता है? 2 hours. Actual production is 5,900. 5,900. Actual overhead which has been incurred is the 1,22,000. 1,22,000 incurred किया है, and actual hours worked are 11,600 hours. 11,600 hours लगे हैं आपके पास में. Now let us see this. अब जो मैं कहना चाह रही थी वो भी आप देखेंगे. Number one thing, you want to compute the cost variances. ठीक है, cost variance देखो, पहले तो ये standard cost per unit 1,20,000 आपको दिया हुआ है, standard cost divided by 6,000. 6,000 से मल्टीप्लाई कर लिया तो this is per unit cost. Remember that this is per unit cost and this is standard cost per hour. Per hour कैसे निकाला? They have given us that for production of 1 unit you need 2 hours. आपको 2 घंटे चाहिए standard. So 6,000 units को बनाने के लिए कितने चाहिए होंगे? 12,000 hours. So 120 divided by 12,000 I have gotten 10 per hour. ये तो मैंने standard rate निकाल ली. Now let us move and जो मैं आपको समझाने की कोशिश कर रही थी वो देखते हैं. So overhead cost variance, we know actual overhead. Actual overhead हमें पता है 1,22,000, ऐसे का ऐसा क्वेश्चन में दिया हुआ है, but this is for 5,900 units. Yes or no? अब आप ये गलती मत कर देना that actual overhead तो 122 आपने लिख दिया क्योंकि यहाँ पे दिया हुआ था, but remember this 122 is for 5,900 and ये जो 120 दिया हुआ है ना, ये आपको 6,000 units के लिए दिया हुआ है. Yes or no? जो 120 दिया हुआ है वो आपको 6,000 यूनिट्स के लिए दिया हुआ है. सो व्हेनेवर वी वांट टू कंपेयर वी विल कंपेयर फॉर द सेम लेवल. तो ये अगर 5,900 यूनिट्स के लिए है तो ये भी 5,900 यूनिट्स के लिए ही होना चाहिए. दिस शुड ऑल्सो बी फॉर 5,900 यूनिट्स. एंड यहाँ पे तो इन्होंने ऐसे कर रखा है, जस्ट वेट, इसको कैसे करते हैं? 1,20,000 is the standard or budgeted cost that they have given for 6,000 units, but I would like to have it for 5,900 units. ठीक है, तो क्या आएगा आंसर? ये आपका आंसर आएगा 1,18,000 and this gives me 4,000 adverse. Why adverse? 1,18,000 इसका आंसर आएगा less 122, so this will give me 4,000 adverse. मतलब कि आपकी स्टैंडर्ड के हिसाब से तो 1,18,000 कॉस्ट होनी चाहिए, बट एक्चुअली द कॉस्ट इज 1,22,000. कॉस्ट आपकी कितनी आई? 1,22,000. सो दिस इज व्हाट आई वाज ट्राइंग टू टेल यू कि जब भी आप ऐसा कॉस्ट का भी निकाल रहे हैं ना, तो आपका बेस हमेशा सिमिलर होना चाहिए. ठीक है, बेस शुड ऑलवेज बी सिमिलर. नाउ जस्ट वेट फॉर अ सेकेंड. Audible now? So this was first thing. Now next they would like to ask us expenditure variance. ठीक है, expenditure variance पूछने की हमसे कोशिश कर रहे हैं. That means spending variance. Spending variance में मैंने क्या लिखा था? standard rate less actual rate multiplied by your actual hours, right? So this is what we want to do. Kya? Standard rate multiplied by actual hours less actual rate multiplied by actual hours. So this तो we already have, isn't it? Actual rate multiplied by actual hours, ये हमारे पास already है 1,22,000 दिया हुआ है क्वेश्चन में. What is the standard rate and what are the actual hours? Actual hours आपको क्वेश्चन में सीधा सीधा दिया हुआ है 11,600 और जब आप आवर्स से मल्टीप्लाई कर रहे हैं तो आपकी स्टैंडर्ड रेट भी आवर्स वाली होनी चाहिए, राइट? वी हैव फाउंड आउट टू स्टैंडर्ड रेट्स, दैट इज पर यूनिट 1 एंड पर आवर 1. मैं यहाँ पे आवर्स से मल्टीप्लाई कर रही हूँ 11,600 आवर्स, सो माय स्टैंडर्ड रेट शुड आल्सो बी 10 पर आवर. इज दैट फाइन? ठीक है. So this is how we have solved this. Next we have efficiency variance. Efficiency variance का क्या मतलब होता है? You want to compare the hours. So hours compare करने का मतलब क्या? We want standard hours multiplied by standard rate less actual hour multiplied by actual rate. So sorry, just wait. Standard rate. Standard rate is going to form the base for me. Standard rate मेरा base होगा and I want to compare the difference between the standard hour and actual hour. तो ठीक है, standard rate मुझे पता है per hour कितनी है 10. Standard rate I know per hour की 10 है, ठीक है, fine. Actual hours कितने हैं क्वेश्चन में दिया हुआ है क्या? Yes, 11,600 क्वेश्चन में दिया हुआ है. That means 11,600 multiplied by per hour की standard rate कितनी है 10. Per hour की standard rate कितनी है 10. Now they are asking me standard hours. Now what should I write? 12,000. That will be wrong. Why? Because this 11,600 hours are for 5,900 units, right? And always your foundation should be same. आपका foundation हमेशा same होना चाहिए. 11,600 आवर्स कितने यूनिट्स के लिए हैं? 5,900 यूनिट्स के लिए. सो स्टैंडर्ड आवर शुड आल्सो बी 2 पर आवर आई नीड एंड हाउ मेनी यूनिट्स आई वांट टू प्रोड्यूस? 5,900. सो दिस इज गोइंग टू बी योर सॉल्यूशन. यहाँ पे हम जनरल मिस्टेक क्या कर सकते हैं? दैट स्टैंडर्ड आवर क्वेश्चन में दिया हुआ है 12,000, राइट? सो हम उसी पे लिख देते हैं. नहीं, we want the comparison should be similar. 11,600 is for 5,900 units. So over here as well, I would like to find out the standard hour, but for the actual production. So I hope it is clear. Simple सा क्वेश्चन था, ठीक है. You have to analyze कि आप दो चीजें जो कंपेयर कर रहे हो ना, वो क्या कंपेयर कर रहे हो. इस पूरे क्वेश्चन में कुछ बातें जो ध्यान रखने वाली थी. Always remember that your standard rate is per hour basis or per unit basis, right? And per hour है या per unit है, it will be very very important for you when you are trying to multiply it with the standard hour or what you can say actual hour. जब आप compare कर रहे हो, so remember both the parts should represent the actual level of production, ठीक है, क्योंकि हम उसी पे compare करना चाहते हैं. नेक्स्ट आई गेस मार्जिनल कॉस्टिंग विल बी कवर्ड. अभी इसके बाद में तो मैं फिक्स्ड ओवरहेड कवर करना चाहती हूँ, फिर उसके बाद में मार्जिनल कॉस्टिंग. ओके, so we have the fixed overheads now. Now let us see that. See, now because I have we have done already a question, ठीक है, तो उसी बेसिस पे आपका फिक्स्ड ओवरहेड्स वाला भी रहेगा, बट वी कैन श्योरली सी दैट what are the formulas and जो कुछ आपके वेरिएंसेस हैं उसके बारे में क्वेश्चन भी कर लेते हैं, ठीक है. नेक्स्ट मैराथन कॉस्टिंग के जो बाकी की टॉपिक्स है ना, जो लीन मैनेजमेंट वाला है, दैट इज समथिंग आई एम थिंकिंग अबाउट टेकिंग इट अप. So next is fixed overhead cost variance. Fixed overhead cost variance में see simple Standard hour multiplied by standard rate, actual hour multiplied by actual rate. When I'm talking about the expenditure variance, so what is the budgeted one multiplied by standard rate, actual hour multiplied by the actual rate, right? Next we have ओवरहेड वॉल्यूम वेरिएंस. वॉल्यूम में मैं क्या कंपेयर करना चाहती हूँ? आई वांट टू कंपेयर द आवर्स, राइट? सो स्टैंडर्ड रेट इज माय फाउंडेशन एंड आई वांट टू कंपेयर द स्टैंडर्ड आवर्स विद द बजटेड आवर्स. देन I would like to compare the capacity variance. Capacity variance में again standard rate is going to be my foundation. Standard rate मेरा foundation होगा. And then I want to compare what are my actual hours and what were my budgeted hours, right? So this is going to tell me my capacity variance. ठीक है? अब एक चीज बताओ, यहाँ पे मैंने actual hours को पहले क्यों रखा है? Actual hours को पहले इसलिए रखा है because actual hours are going to be always more. ठीक है? Actual hours आपके ज्यादा होंगे. Budgeted hours आपने कितने रखे थे? Actual hours उससे ज्यादा हो सकते हैं. Now next we have the calendar variance. So calendar variance is simply what are your actual number of working days and what are your budgeted working days. ठीक है? And it is going to be multiplied with the standard rate per day. Standard rate से multiply करना है लेकिन per day में. One thing that you have to remember is चाहे वो आपका capacity variance हो, budget variance हो, कोई सा भी variance हो, in all these kind of variances, wherever we want to compare the hours, standard rate will be used as the foundation. ठीक है? Standard rate as a foundation use किया जाएगा. Now for that matter, let us see this particular question very quickly. तो यहाँ पे आपको दो चीजें दी हुई हैं. Fixed overheads 15 lakh budgeted, actual was 15 lakh 60,000. Great. Units of production has been given 7,500 units, 7,800 units. Budget as well as actual. Standard time for one unit is 2 hours that has been given. So through this you can calculate standard hours. आप पूरे standard hours भी calculate कर सकते हैं. Actual hours which has been given is 16,000 hours. 16,000 hours. Now I would like to ask you one thing. ठीक है? एक चीज मैं आपसे पूछूंगी, अगर मैं 2 hours को 7,500 यूनिट से मल्टीप्लाई करती हूँ, what I'll get? Would I get budgeted hours or standard hours? क्या मिलेगा मुझे, budgeted hours या standard hours? If I will multiply 7,500 units with 2 hours, what I'll be getting? Tell me. Anyways, आंसर पता नहीं मिलेगा कि नहीं मिलेगा, but let's see this. Fixed overhead cost variances. Cost variance will simply what I want to calculate. Actual production के लिए standard cost क्या है and actual overhead कितने हैं. Actual cost तो मुझे पता है 15,60,000, but this 15 lakh is given for 7,500 units and I would like to find out for 7,800. This is I have got. Now next thing is overhead expenditure variance. ठीक है? Overhead expenditure variance में budgeted overheads less actual overheads. Actual overheads तो हमको पता है. Let's go back, otherwise you won't be able to relate it. See this. यहाँ पे मुझे क्या चाहिए? Budgeted hours multiplied by standard rate, actual hours, actual rate. This is my expenditure variance where I would like to compare the rates, ठीक है, as well as my hours. Now you see this over here. ये 15 lakhs कैसे आया, वही मैं आपसे पूछ रही थी. Actual overheads is 15,60,000. ठीक है? ये आपका 15,60,000 आएगा. बट यहाँ पे आप दूसरी चीज क्या कंपेयर करना चाहते थे? बजटेड आवर्स, सॉरी दिस इज एक्सपेंडिचर. बजटेड आवर्स मल्टीप्लाइड बाय स्टैंडर्ड रेट. बजटेड आवर्स आपको कैसे मिलेंगे? $7,500 को जब आप 2 से मल्टीप्लाई कर देंगे देन यू विल गेट योर बजटेड आवर्स. तो आपके स्टैंडर्ड आवर्स क्या हैं? ठीक है, देखो, सी द डिफरेंस. Budgeted hours for me is 7,500, which is the budgeted units multiplied by 2 hours, 15,000. ठीक है? तो फिर standard hours कैसे निकालेंगे? Standard hours will be what is my actual production multiplied by standard hours needed to complete it. That is 7,800 multiplied by 2, 15,600. Is that fine? So now you will get the difference. ये आपका budgeted hours होगा, which is budgeted units multiplied by standard hour required. Then standard hours क्या होगा? Actual units multiplied by standard hours required in order to complete it. Is there any question regarding this? ठीक है, I hope we are clear. Now next thing, I need standard rate. Standard rate मुझे per hour चाहिए. So this is 15 lakhs cost, and I have found out my budgeted hours as 15,000. So this gives me 10 rupees per hour, right? So मुझे अपना आंसर मिल गया है. Budgeted hour multiplied by standard rate, actual hour multiplied by actual rate. This is my expenditure variance. Now next we need to talk about the volume variance. Volume variance में absorbed overheads less budgeted overheads. Please remember these formulas, they will be more handy for you. ठीक है, तो यहाँ पे हम कंपेयर करना चाहते हैं वॉल्यूम वेरिएंस में स्टैंडर्ड आर मल्टीप्लाइड बाय स्टैंडर्ड रेट, बजटेड आर मल्टीप्लाइड बाय स्टैंडर्ड रेट. ओके, नेक्स्ट. Yes, budgeted hour multiplied by standard rate, standard hour multiplied by standard rate. Standard rate दोनों ही केस में ये है आपकी, right? Now next thing is, मैंने आपको standard hours निकाल के बताया था आपके standard hours कितने होंगे. So in that particular case 7,500 के लिए अगर ये कॉस्ट है तो 7,800 के लिए क्या होगा, बिकॉज वी वांट टू कंपेयर एवरीथिंग फॉर द एक्चुअल्स. ठीक है, हम हर चीज एक्चुअल के लिए कंपेयर करना चाहते हैं. सो 15 लाख divided by 7,500 multiplied by 7,800 and this gives me 15,60,000. If you remember this, I have shown you that what is going to be your standard hours, actual units multiplied by standard hour per unit 15,600. So मैं अगर ये सब ना भी करूं और मैं 15,600 से सीधा मल्टीप्लाई कर दूं और यहाँ पे 15,000 से, which we have already seen, I'll get my answer. Yes or no? I don't know whether it is too difficult to you or pretty easy for you. I don't know about it. चलिए, next thing is fixed overhead efficiency variance. Efficiency variance में what they want to compare the standard hours for actual production less actual hours. Actual hours are given to me 16,000. ठीक है, मुझे कितने hours चाहिए actual production के लिए? 7,800 multiplied by 2, that is 15,600. It is just the matter of remembering the formula. Now I need the standard rate, right? और यहाँ पे हमारे लिए standard rate क्या है वो हमने already per hour निकाल ली थी, that is 10. ठीक है, 10 हमने already पहले से ही, sorry, this is 100. We have already found it out. So this is per hour related rate for you, and you have gotten your efficiency variance. And in a similar fashion, you can calculate your capacity variance as well, because actual hours are given to you, budgeted hours I have given, that how we will calculate. Standard rate is also given. Standard rate मतलब क्या? Budgeted units multiplied by 2, hours कितने हैं आपके? ठीक है, 15,000, right? And just divide it. You have gotten your 100. Fine. So this is the thing with the standard costing. Have you got any questions related to it? How to remember it? See, that is something which is tricky in it. ठीक है, you have to memorize the formula, but still I can I'll just try to just what you can say, make you understand this. देखो, first thing first, they want to compare the expenditure related variances with you. Expenditure related variance, standard rate and actual rate. नॉर्मली हम क्या कर रहे थे, यहाँ पे हम एक्चुअल से ही कंपेयर कर रहे थे. बेसिकली हम यहाँ पे एक्चुअल से ही कंपेयर कर रहे थे, बट ओवर हियर दे हैव आल्सो इंक्लूडेड द बजटेड आवर्स इन इट. ठीक है, यहाँ पे नेक्स्ट थिंग दैट इज द मैटर ऑफ कंफ्यूजन. नेक्स्ट थिंग, फिक्स्ड ओवरहेड वॉल्यूम वेरिएंसेस में स्टैंडर्ड आर, they want to compare it with the budgeted hours, right, and standard rate being same. एक चीज जो आप याद करने के लिए कर सकते हैं, even in your volume variance or in your capacity variance, just remember that these standard rate is the foundation over here. ठीक है, standard rate आपकी foundation है. Capacity utilization के लिए you are trying to keep the actual hour, you compare with the budgeted hours. And in the overhead volume variance or the volume variance, so you are trying to compare the standard hour with the budgeted hour, right? Budgeted hours दोनों में ही पीछे है और यहाँ पे पहले standard है and फिर actual है. This is something. Now the problem with this is that या तो इसको समझने के लिए पहली चीज तो ये फॉर्मूलाज इस हिसाब से बनाए गए हैं. एडवर्स और फेवरेबल क्या होता है? एडवर्स और फेवरेबल मींस व्हाटएवर थिंग यू वांट टू कंपेयर इट विद. लाइक जस्ट आई विल जस्ट डिसाइफर वन फॉर्मूला फॉर यू. यहाँ पे मेरे सामने जो है बजटेड आवर्स है एंड एक्चुअल आवर्स है. सपोज माय बजटेड आवर्स आर 15,000, राइट, एंड माय एक्चुअल आवर्स आर 15,600. व्हाट डू यू थिंक अबाउट दिस वेरिएंस? कैपेसिटी आपने यूटिलाइज की है या नहीं? इज इट फेवरेबल और एडवर्स? बताओ ये फेवरेबल है या फिर एडवर्स है? सी दिस, ये आपके एक्चुअल आवर्स थे और ये आपके बजटेड आवर्स है. आपने बजट 15,000, आपने सोचा था 15,000 घंटे काम करेंगे हम, बट योर एक्चुअल इज 16,000. So now this means that you have overutilized your capacity and that is why this variance is in favorable. ठीक है, so just try to focus on what you are trying to find out. For example, in capacity variance we want to find out कि हमने budget कितना रखा था, कितने budgeted hours थे and how much actual production we have done. Whereas when you talk about the efficiency related variance, what you are trying to compare that आपके actual hours क्या है, right, and what should be the standard for it. कि अगर मैंने मान लीजिए 15,000, मैंने 600 यूनिट्स पे काम किया, तो उसका स्टैंडर्ड क्या होना चाहिए बेसिकली. सो एनीवेज यहाँ पे ऐसा कोई लॉजिक या वो कुछ भी नहीं है. आप यहाँ पे एफिशिएंसी में कंप्यूट करना चाहते हैं दैट इफ यू हैव वर्कड ऑन टू दिस, what are the standard hours for it, right? And this is how they have made this particular formula. The end ground of it is that you have to memorize it. ठीक है, आपको लॉजिक समझ में आ भी जाएगा ना तो भी आपको मेमोराइज करना पड़ेगा. So that is the what you can say advice I can give you. ठीक है, चलिए now next thing we have to see is marginal costing. ठीक है, in case of marginal costing बहुत ही जल्दी से करेंगे because this particular topic we have done this several number of times and there is nothing new which will be we will be talking about it over here. Marginal costing का मतलब क्या होता है? Basically you want to take the decisions on the basis of variable cost, right? एक डिफरेंस जो आपको समझना चाहिए, मार्जिनल कॉस्टिंग एंड एब्जॉर्प्शन कॉस्टिंग में क्या फर्क है. सो लेट्स सी द फ्रेमवर्क ऑफ इट. मार्जिनल कॉस्टिंग में यू सी दिस इज माय सेल्स रेवेन्यू, right, and I want to find out contribution. One day somebody was asking me कि contribution और profit में क्या फर्क होता है, right? So first of all sales revenue will be written. After that all sort of variable cost. See, sales less हर तरीके की variable cost when you will deduct, be it manufacturing related variable cost, selling related variable cost, anything, and contribution deduct कर देंगे आप. फिर all sort of variable fixed cost, be it manufacturing related fixed cost or selling related fixed cost, administration related fixed cost, anything, हर तरीके की fixed cost, and finally you will get your profit. This is what happens in the marginal costing. Now the area of difference is that in marginal costing you see your opening inventory as well as the closing inventory, they will be valued at marginal cost. मतलब कि आप inventory valuation में fixed cost को include नहीं करते. In marginal costing for inventory valuation you do not include fixed cost, right? Whereas in absorption costing, you include fixed cost for the inventory valuation part. And this is what brings in all the difference, right? देखिए, so I have deducted all the variable cost, like variable selling cost, variable administration cost, distribution cost. I have gotten the contribution margin. Then I will deduct fixed cost out of it. Fixed cost, हर तरीके की fixed cost मैंने minus कर दी है. Selling, administration, production, and I have gotten my profit, right? Now, what is in absorption costing? Absorption costing says that to find out the valuation of your stock, what you should do is you should include the fixed cost as well. So this is C. Sales figure, you will be given with it, right? Cost of goods manufactured में आपका क्या क्या आएगा? Direct material, direct labor, direct expenses, factory overheads में variable भी और fixed भी. दोनों ले लिया आपने, variable भी and fixed भी. This is your total cost. Now you need to add the value of opening stock, deduct the value of closing stock, and all of these things, they will include a portion of fixed cost as well. अब देखो, आपको ये सब तो करना नहीं है, right? But the learning that you have to take is, in marginal costing, stock valuation does not include fixed cost, whereas in absorption costing, the stock valuation, जब मैं अभी अपना stock valuation करूंगी ना, so I'll take all these costs. अगर इस साल मैंने 10 लाख रुपए खर्चा किए हैं, 6 lakh rupees variable cost, 4 lakh rupees fixed cost, so I will take the total 10 lakh rupees for valuing my inventory, and this is what the difference which comes in the absorption costing. So this is your, and after that you will get your gross profit. Just deduct your administration and selling related expenses, be it your fixed or variable, जो भी हो, deduct it and you will get your profit, right? तो ये हो गया आपका absorption costing and marginal costing का difference. Now next thing that comes into the picture is your this is called as CVP analysis, and we solve many questions using this. CVP analysis, cost volume profit ratio, ठीक है? Cost volume profit analysis, sorry. Now what happens in this particular analysis, you have to understand this कि अगर आपकी sales 100 है, आपका variable cost 60 है, तो आपका contribution 40 होगा, right? आउट ऑफ दिस आप अपनी फिक्स कॉस्ट माइनस करेंगे तो आपको आपका प्रॉफिट मिल जाएगा. Whenever we talk about PV ratio का क्या मतलब होता है? प्रॉफिट वॉल्यूम रेशियो. PV ratio means profit volume ratio, and PV ratio represents contribution divided by sales multiplied by 100. Now if I have to find out the break even sales का मतलब क्या होता है? What will be the sale at which I will be able to, what you can say, reach a situation of no profit no loss, ठीक है? Remember that I'm talking about sales. ब्रेक इवन सेल्स वो पॉइंट है, अगर मान लीजिए मैं कहती हूँ मेरा ब्रेक इवन सेल्स 10 लाख रुपीज है. दिस मीन्स if in this year I'll be able to do a sales of 10 lakhs, then I'll be a situation of no profit no loss. 10 लाख रुपए की सेल करने के बाद में मेरे पास जीरो बैलेंस होगा, नो प्रॉफिट नो लॉस, ना नुकसान हो रहा है ना फायदा हो रहा है, ठीक है? Every business needs to find it out. Why? Because they know if they will go beyond the sales of 10 lakh rupees, then they will generate profit. तब उनको profit होगा. So yeah, break even point में fixed cost divided by PV ratio. This will give you break even point in rupees. अगर आपको units में find out करना है, so fixed cost divided by contribution per unit. This is what your break even point is. Now margin of safety का मतलब what is beyond the break even point. So I know that my break even sales is 10 lakh rupees, and if I am earning 15 lakhs, if my sales is 15 lakhs, so the remaining 5 lakh जो बाकी का 5 लाख है वो मेरा क्या है? मार्जिन ऑफ सेफ्टी. वो मेरा क्या है? मार्जिन ऑफ सेफ्टी. सो इफ मार्जिन ऑफ सेफ्टी इज गिवन टू मी, आई कैन फाइंड आउट प्रॉफिट. देखो, this is the formula. Remember that margin of safety is equals to profit divided by PV ratio. प्रॉफिट डिवाइडेड बाय पीवी रेशियो. तो अगर आपको प्रॉफिट फाइंड आउट करना है तो आप क्या कर सकते हैं? मार्जिन ऑफ सेफ्टी मल्टीप्लाइड बाय पीवी रेशियो. क्वेश्चन में आपको मार्जिन ऑफ सेफ्टी दिया हुआ है, मल्टीप्लाई इट विद द पीवी रेशियो एंड यू विल गेट योर प्रॉफिट. वन मोर थिंग दैट आई वुड लाइक टू टेल यू ओवर हियर, कभी कभी आपको पीवी रेशो निकालने के लिए कुछ डिफरेंट सिचुएशन दे सकते हैं। सो पीवी रेशो का एक फॉर्मूला ये भी होता है, डिफरेंस इन प्रॉफिट डिवाइडेड बाय डिफरेंस इन सेल्स। सो अगर देखो मुझे ये सिचुएशन दी हुई है कि at 10,000 units of sales I am able to earn 5 lakh rupees profit, and 20,000 units of sale में I am able to earn 10 lakh rupees of profit, right? So you need to find out the PV ratio. तो आप इससे फाइंड आउट कर सकते हैं डिफरेंस इन प्रॉफिट एंड डिफरेंस इन सेल्स, राइट? बाकी मार्जिनल कॉस्टिंग में सेम काइंड ऑफ क्वेश्चंस होते हैं. These are the basic formulas, and by using these basic formulas you can solve the marginal costing question. This is it that I'll be taking up in this particular class, and I hope that this class would have been very fruitful for you. If it did, then please do not forget to like this video. Thank you so much for joining in, and I'll see you tomorrow for the next session.